For 67 years, I thought I understood human nature. 25 of those years I spent as an insurance fraud investigator, learning every trick, every tell, every microscopic crack in a liar's facade. I'd seen it all. Staged accidents, false death claims, elaborate cons that would make Hollywood jealous. But nothing prepared me for the day I discovered that my own stepson was planning to fake my death and steal everything my late husband and I had built together. My name is Patricia, and what I'm about to share with you shattered every assumption I had about family, trust, and the people who call you mom while plotting to put you in the ground. It started on a humid Tuesday morning in late August. I was in my study in our Charleston home, a historic property on East Bay Street that my husband, Richard, and I had lovingly restored over 15 years. Richard had passed away from pancreatic cancer 2 years prior, and the house had become both my sanctuary and my prison. Too many memories in every room, but too precious to leave. I was organizing Richard's old photographs when I heard the doorbell. Through the window, I saw my stepson Kevin standing on the porch with a woman I didn't recognize. Kevin was Richard's son from his first marriage, 42 years old, with the kind of smooth charm that had always made me slightly uneasy. Richard had loved him fiercely, despite Kevin's string of failed businesses and questionable friends. I'd tried to love him too, for Richard's sake, but there was always something calculating in Kevin's eyes, especially when he looked at our house. I opened the door, and Kevin gave me that practiced smile, the one that never quite reached his eyes. "Patricia, hope we're not bothering you," he gestured to the woman beside him. "This is Amber, my fiancée. I wanted you two to finally meet." Amber was mid-30s, with the kind of polished appearance that screamed trying too hard. Designer bag, fresh manicure, yoga-toned figure squeezed into expensive athleisure. She extended a hand with a smile so white it could have been in a toothpaste commercial. "Mrs. Donovan, Kevin has told me so much about you. What a beautiful home." Her eyes swept past me into the foyer, and I saw it. That quick assessment. The appraising glance that lingers just a second too long on the antique chandelier, the original crown molding, the Tiffany lamp on the hall table. I'd seen that look countless times in my career. It was the look of someone calculating value. "Come in." I stepped aside, my investigator's instincts already humming. We settled in the living room, and Kevin launched into casual conversation. How was I doing? Was the house too much for me to maintain? Had I thought about selling? Maybe moving into one of those nice retirement communities? "I'm 67, Kevin, not 90. I can still manage a house." Of course, he laughed, but Amber touched his arm, a gesture that seemed rehearsed. "We just worry about you, all alone in this big place. Right, babe?" "Absolutely." Amber's voice dripped with fake concern. "And Kevin mentioned you had a little fall last month? That must have been so scary." I'd slipped on a wet bathroom tile and bruised my hip. Nothing serious. I'd mentioned it to Kevin in passing during one of his rare phone calls. Why was he bringing it up now? "I'm fine." It was minor. Still. Kevin leaned forward, his face arranged into concern. "You're not getting any younger, Patricia. What if something serious happened? What if you fell and couldn't reach your phone?" There it was. The opening move. I'd seen this pattern before in insurance fraud cases. Establish vulnerability, plant seeds of doubt, position yourself as the concerned helper. My internal alarm bells were screaming. "I have a medical alert system." I kept my voice neutral. "That's smart." Amber nodded enthusiastically. "But you know, I'm actually a certified home health aide. I've been thinking about how we could help you. Kevin and I could move into the guest cottage out back. That way, you'd have someone close by if you needed anything." The guest cottage, the charming 2-bedroom structure that Richard had converted into a studio for his painting. The cottage that had its own entrance, its own privacy, its own perfect vantage point to monitor the main house. "That's thoughtful, but unnecessary. Just think about it." Kevin stood, signaling it was time to leave. "We worry about you, that's all. Family takes care of family." After they left, I sat in Richard's study and thought about what my late husband would say. He'd always defended Kevin, always made excuses. "He's had a hard life, Patricia. His mother abandoned him. Give him a chance." But Richard wasn't here anymore, and I didn't have the luxury of blind faith. I pulled out my laptop and did what I'd always done when something felt wrong. I investigated. Amber Sinclair, 34. Certified nursing assistant, but her license had been suspended in Florida 3 years ago. No details publicly available, but the suspension was permanent. She'd moved to South Carolina shortly after. Kevin had met her 6 months ago, according to his Facebook, which I rarely checked but suddenly felt compelled to scroll through. Then I dug into Kevin's financials. He'd given Richard permission years ago to access his accounts as an emergency contact, and he'd never updated it after Richard died. What I found made my blood run cold. Kevin was broke. Not just regular broke, but catastrophically in debt. Credit cards maxed out, 2 personal loans in default, and most telling, he'd been researching South Carolina inheritance laws. His browser history, which I accessed through a shared family cloud account he'd forgotten about, showed searches for how to contest a will, South Carolina forced share laws, how long until estate settled, and chillingly, elderly accidents statistics. I should have called someone right then, but I needed more. I needed to know exactly what they were planning. 2 days later, Kevin called. "Patricia, I hope you've thought about our offer. Amber and I would really like to help. Actually, I've been feeling a bit unsteady lately." I lied smoothly, years of interrogating fraudsters teaching me how to play a role. Maybe having someone nearby wouldn't be the worst idea. "That's wonderful." I could hear the smile in his voice. "We can move in this weekend." They arrived Saturday morning with minimal luggage and maximal enthusiasm. Amber immediately began fussing over me, checking my blood pressure, suggesting I needed more rest, insisting on making my meals. "You just relax, Mrs. Donovan. Let me take care of everything." That first evening, I pretended to take the sleeping pill Amber offered. Instead, I tucked it into my cheek, spat it out when she left, and stayed wide awake. Around midnight, I heard voices from the cottage. The windows were open, and sound carried perfectly across the garden. "She's so trusting." Amber's laugh was nothing like her syrupy voice from earlier. "This is going to be easier than I thought." "Did she take the pill?" Kevin's voice. "Swallowed it right in front of me. She'll sleep hard tonight. You should go check the paintings." My heart stopped. The paintings. Richard had been a modest collector, nothing famous, but we had 3 pieces that he'd purchased decades ago, before the artist became renowned. A small Winslow Homer watercolor worth approximately $200,000, an early Norman Rockwell sketch valued at $150,000, and Richard's pride and joy, a previously unknown Mary Cassatt study that had been authenticated just before he died, worth at least $400,000. I heard footsteps on the path. The side door to my study, which I rarely locked, creaked open. I watched from the darkened hallway as Kevin entered, flashlight in hand, and went straight to Richard's paintings. He stood in front of the Cassatt for a long moment, then pulled out his phone and took pictures. He photographed the back of the frame, the signature, the authentication certificate in Richard's file cabinet. He even measured the frame. Then he called Amber. "It's definitely the one." The buyer confirmed he'll pay $400,000 for the Cassatt, $200,000 for the Homer, $150,000 for the Rockwell. That's $750,000 total. "When does he want them?" "Next week. But we need to wait until after." A pause. "After the funeral." My blood turned to ice. "You're sure about the stairs?" Kevin continued. "The medical examiner won't question it?" "Baby, I've done this before." An elderly woman with documented unsteadiness, living alone in a big house with a steep staircase. Falls are the leading cause of death in this age group. As long as there's no autopsy reason to suspect foul play, they'll rule it accidental. And with my nursing background, I'll be the grieving almost daughter-in-law who tried so hard to prevent this tragedy. What about the will? That's the beauty of South Carolina law. As Richard's biological son, you're entitled to a portion of the estate regardless of what the will says. But if Patricia dies before it's been 2 years since Richard's death, and there's no updated will, you inherit everything as his next of kin. The house, the paintings, the investment accounts, all of it. She signed the new will last week, naming me as executor. I saw. "You're brilliant." Amber's voice was honey-sweet again. "And my death certificate statement as a medical professional will expedite everything. No investigations, no delays. We'll have the estate settled and the house sold within 6 months." I stood frozen in that hallway, listening to them plot my murder with the casual efficiency of people ordering takeout. Kevin left through the side door, and I heard them return to the cottage. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone, but I managed to text the one person I knew I could trust. "Need you. Emergency. Don't call. Just come." I sent it to my brother Marcus, a retired FBI agent living in Savannah. He arrived at dawn, letting himself in with the spare key I'd given him years ago. I was sitting in the kitchen, having not slept at all, and the moment I saw his face, I broke down. Marcus listened to everything, his expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, he pulled out his phone. "We're calling the police right now." "No." I grabbed his arm. "Not yet. We need proof of intent. Right now, it's their word against mine. 2 people versus 1 elderly woman who might be confused or paranoid. Patricia, they're planning to kill you." "I know. But I also know how this works. I spent 25 years building cases. We need irrefutable evidence." I looked at my brother. "And I know exactly how to get it." Marcus wanted to argue, but he saw the look on my face. The same look I'd had when I was closing in on a fraud case. Determined, calculating, ready. We spent that morning setting up hidden cameras. Marcus had connections from his FBI days, and by noon, we had micro cameras in my study, the hallway, the living room, and most importantly, outside my bedroom door and at the top of the stairs. Audio recording devices went in the main rooms. Everything fed to a secure cloud server that Marcus controlled. "Now what?" he asked. Now I play the perfect victim. For the next 3 days, I performed the role of my life. I let Amber fuss over me. I took the sleeping pills she gave me, or pretended to. I accepted her help with meals, never eating anything she prepared without first videoing her cooking process and saving samples. I complained about dizziness, mentioned feeling weak, talked about how those steep stairs were getting harder to navigate. "Maybe I should get a stairlift installed," I mused one morning at breakfast. Kevin's face flickered with something dark before he smiled. "Or you could just move into the downstairs guest room. Save the money. But all my things are upstairs. Richard's closet, our photos, everything. We can move it all down for you." Amber patted my hand. "It would be safer." Safer for them, I thought. A room on the first floor meant fewer opportunities for a believable stair accident. They needed me upstairs. No, I couldn't. That room was always for guests. I belong in my bedroom. I watched relief cross both their faces. That night, Marcus and I reviewed the footage. We'd captured Kevin entering the house 3 more times when he thought I was asleep, photographing other valuables, measuring spaces, making phone calls to someone he called the buyer. But we still didn't have the smoking gun, clear evidence of the murder plot. "Maybe I should just have an accident," I said slowly. Marcus stared at me. "Absolutely not. Not a real one, a staged one. What if I fell but survived? What would they do then? Patricia, you're not bait." "I'm not bait. I'm the trap." I leaned forward. "Think about it. If I fall but don't die, they'll panic. They'll either have to try again quickly, which means mistakes, or they'll reveal their plans trying to figure out what went wrong. It took 2 hours to convince Marcus, and another hour to plan it safely. We involved Marcus's former FBI partner, now working as a private investigator, and a trauma doctor friend who owed Marcus a favor. The next afternoon, I staged my fall. I'd told Amber I was tired and going upstairs to nap. Kevin was conveniently out, probably meeting the art buyer. I climbed the stairs, made sure I was in perfect view of the camera, then used a technique I'd seen in stunt coordinator training videos years ago. I tucked my chin, protected my head, and rolled down the stairs in a controlled fall that looked devastating, but left me with nothing worse than some calculated bruises. I'd patted myself carefully under my clothes, and I knew exactly how to land. But I screamed like it was real, and I stayed down like I was hurt. Amber came running from the cottage. She rushed up to me, and for just a second, I saw something flash across her face. Disappointment. "Mrs. Donovan, oh my God, don't move!" But her hands, checking my pulse, pressing on my ribs, felt more evaluating than concerned. "My hip," I moaned. "I can't feel my leg." "I'm calling 911. "No." I grabbed her wrist. "Please, no ambulance. I can't afford another hospital bill. Just help me to the couch." I watched her mind work. A hospital meant doctors, examinations, reports. It meant witnesses and documentation. She wanted me upstairs, unconscious, found hours later when it was too late. "Mrs. Donovan, you need to be examined." "Please." I made my voice weak. "Just help me up. If I'm not better in an hour, we'll go." Reluctantly, she helped me to the living room couch. She brought pillows, ice, pain medication, and then I heard her step outside to make a phone call. She fell. "No, she's not dead." "I don't know. She won't let me call an ambulance." "What do you mean, tonight?" "Kevin, she might have actually hurt herself this time." Fine. But you better be right about this." She came back inside with a smile. "How are you feeling? Any better?" "A little. Maybe I'll just rest here for a while." "Good idea." She adjusted my pillow with hands that trembled slightly. "You just sleep. I'll check on you in a little bit." The house grew quiet. Through the camera feeds Marcus was monitoring remotely, we watched Amber pace in the cottage. We watched Kevin return at dusk, watched them have a heated discussion we couldn't quite hear. Then, around 9 p.m., they made their move. I'd been lying on that couch for hours, genuinely uncomfortable now, despite the padding. The house was dark except for a small lamp in the corner. I heard the back door open quietly, footsteps in the kitchen. Kevin and Amber appeared in the living room doorway. In the dim light, they looked different, harder. The masks were completely off. "She's still out." Amber checked my pulse again, not gently this time. "We need to do it tonight." Kevin's voice was tense. "If she actually hurt herself in that fall, there'll be doctors, questions. This is our chance. Everyone knows she's been unsteady. Another fall, this time fatal, makes perfect sense. I'll need to check her more thoroughly first. Make sure there's nothing that contradicts our story." I felt Amber's hands examining me, professional but rough. She patted herself. "Look, there's extra fabric under her clothes." Kevin swore. "She knows." "Don't be paranoid. She's probably just trying to prevent bruises. Old people bruise easily. She's probably self-conscious." But I could hear the doubt in Amber's voice. Kevin walked closer, and I could feel him staring down at me. Through barely cracked eyelids, I saw him lean down, his face inches from mine. "Are you awake, Patricia?" I didn't move, didn't breathe. Years of interviewing liars had taught me how to lie perfectly still. "She's out cold." Amber pulled him back. "The medication I gave her would knock out a horse. Stop being paranoid and help me move her." "Move her where?" "Upstairs. Back to the top of the stairs. We'll position her like she was trying to come down, got dizzy, fell again, this time fatally." My heart was slamming against my ribs, but I kept every muscle slack. Dead weight. They lifted me, Kevin taking my shoulders, Amber my legs. They started carrying me toward the stairs, and I knew I had seconds to act. The cameras were recording everything, but if they actually threw me down those stairs, recording wouldn't save my life. "Going somewhere with my sister?" Marcus's voice cut through the darkness like a blade. Lights flooded on. Kevin and Amber froze, still holding me. Marcus stood in the dining room doorway, and he wasn't alone. 2 police officers flanked him, and my doctor friend Dr. Sarah Chen stood with a medical bag, ready to verify I was unharmed. "Put her down." Gently. They dropped me. Not gently. I hit the floor hard enough to knock the wind out of me, and this time the pain was real. Dr. Chen rushed over while the police moved toward Kevin and Amber. "This is a misunderstanding." Kevin's charm switched back on like a light. "We were helping Patricia. She fell earlier, and we were taking her upstairs to her bed." "Really?" Marcus held up his phone, showing the camera feed. "Because this footage shows you plotting her murder. And this recording has you discussing selling her paintings after her funeral. And these text messages to an art dealer confirm you've been planning to steal a $750,000 collection." I watched Kevin's face cycle through denial, anger, calculation, and finally, defeat. Amber tried to run. She actually bolted for the back door, but one of the officers caught her before she made it to the kitchen. She was screaming about how it was all Kevin's idea, how she didn't know, how she was innocent. "Save it." Marcus's voice was cold. "We have you on tape discussing the accident you'd staged before. That elderly man in Tampa 2 years ago? The one whose death got your nursing license suspended?" The one whose estate you and your boyfriend at the time inherited before his family could contest? Florida PD is very interested in reopening that case. The color drained from Amber's face. As the police read them their rights, Kevin turned to me. I was sitting up now, Dr. Chen checking me over. Our eyes met, and I saw something I'd never expected to see. Genuine confusion. Why? He asked. Why did you marry my father if you were just going to cut me out? Cut you out? I stared at him. Kevin, I never cut you out. Your father left you his entire art collection in the original will. The paintings were always going to be yours. All you had to do was wait. He blinked. What? Richard knew how much you loved his collection. He wanted you to have it. But he wanted you to appreciate it, not sell it the moment he was gone. The will stipulated you'd inherit the paintings when you turned 45, in 3 years, to give you time to mature. I was just the custodian until then. Kevin's face went slack. The paintings were already mine? They were always going to be yours. You didn't need to kill me. You just needed to be patient. I stood up slowly, Dr. Chen steadying me. You would have gotten $750,000 worth of art, free and clear. Instead, you're getting 25 to life. As they led Kevin and Amber out in handcuffs, Amber was screaming obscenities, but Kevin was silent, broken. The realization of what he'd thrown away was hitting him harder than any punishment the court could deliver. The next few weeks were a blur of statements, lawyers, and news coverage. The story of the stepson who plotted to murder his stepmother for an inheritance he was already getting made regional headlines. Kevin's case was complicated by Amber's involvement, and when Florida officially reopened the Tampa investigation, both of them were looking at multiple murder charges across state lines. The trial was set for the following year, but the evidence was so overwhelming that both their lawyers were pushing for plea deals. Marcus stayed with me for a month, helping me process everything. Dr. Chen checked on me regularly, more as a friend than a doctor. Slowly, the house stopped feeling like a crime scene and started feeling like home again. One evening, Marcus and I sat on the porch with bourbon, watching the sun set over Charleston Harbor. You could have died, he said quietly, if I'd been 5 minutes later, but you weren't. And I didn't. I squeezed his hand. You taught me something important when we were kids, Marcus. You always said the best defense is a good offense. I wasn't going to sit around waiting to be a victim. You're terrifying, you know that? I smiled. I learned from the best. What are you going to do with the paintings? I'd been thinking about that. Richard wanted them to go to someone who'd appreciate them, not sell them. I'm donating the cassette to the Charleston Museum. The Homer and Rockwell will go to establish a scholarship fund in Richard's name for art students. He'd like that. He would. I took a sip of bourbon. And I'm setting up a foundation, too, for elder abuse prevention. Using my insurance fraud investigation experience to teach seniors how to spot financial exploitation, how to recognize the warning signs before it's too late. Marcus raised his glass. To Richard. And to you, for being too stubborn to be a victim. We clinked glasses as fireflies began their evening dance in the garden. 3 months later, I testified at Kevin's preliminary hearing. He wouldn't look at me. Amber, in contrast, stared daggers the entire time. Their defense attorneys tried to paint me as a paranoid woman who'd entrapped 2 innocent people, but the evidence was overwhelming. The recordings, the camera footage, the searches on Kevin's computer, Amber's suspended nursing license, the connection to the Tampa case. The prosecutor told me they were both likely to accept plea deals. Kevin for 15 years, Amber for 20, with the possibility of additional charges from Florida. How do you feel about that? She asked me. I feel like justice is being served. I paused. But I also feel sad. Kevin had every opportunity to be part of this family. Richard loved him so much, he just couldn't see past his greed. Mrs. Donovan, if you don't mind me asking, how did you stay so calm through all of this? Most people in your situation would have panicked. I thought about that. I spent my career investigating people who thought they were smarter than everyone else. People who believed they could get away with fraud, with theft, with staging accidents. What I learned is that criminals almost always underestimate their victims. They see what they want to see. An elderly woman, alone, vulnerable, trusting. They didn't see the investigator. They didn't see the woman who'd spent decades catching people exactly like them. That night, I stood in Richard's study, looking at the empty spaces where his paintings had hung. The cassette was already at the museum, where people could enjoy it. The scholarship fund had been established, and I was still here, in this house we'd built together, living the life we'd planned. I thought about what Richard would say if he could see me now. He'd probably laugh and shake his head and say, "I always knew you were tougher than you looked, Patricia." Looking back now, almost a year after discovering my stepson's plot to murder me, I can tell you this: aging doesn't make you weak, it makes you experienced. It gives you decades of wisdom, of pattern recognition, of understanding human nature in ways young people simply can't. Kevin and Amber saw a 67-year-old widow living alone in a big house. They saw vulnerability and opportunity. They didn't see a woman who'd spent her career outsmarting criminals. They didn't see someone who'd learned to trust her instincts, to document everything, to never assume good intentions without verification. If there's a lesson here, it's this: your age is not your weakness. It's your superpower. Every year you've lived, every experience you've survived, every lesson you've learned, it all adds up to a formidable force. And when someone underestimates you because of your age, they're handing you an advantage they don't even realize. Pay attention to the little things: the glance that lingers too long on your valuables, the concern that feels rehearsed, the helper who seems too eager to isolate you from your support system. Trust your gut, especially when it's been trained by decades of life experience. And remember, family isn't just about blood. Marcus dropped everything to help me. Dr. Chen stood by me when I needed a witness. The people who show up when you send that desperate text at midnight, those are your real family. I'm 68 now. The house is quieter these days, but in a peaceful way. I've started teaching fraud prevention workshops at the senior center. I've reconnected with old colleagues from my investigator days. I've even been on a few dates with a retired judge who appreciates a woman with good war stories. Every morning, I wake up in my bedroom, walk carefully down those stairs that almost became my murder scene, and make coffee in my kitchen. And I'm grateful that I trusted my instincts, grateful that I had people who believed me, grateful that I'm still here to tell this story. Because let me tell you, surviving your own planned murder has a way of making you appreciate every single ordinary day that follows, and I intend to have a whole lot more of those days.